Simone Inzaghi walked the same path that Jose Mourinho did in 2010. Back then, it was the special ones Inter that shocked the world, knocking out one of the best Barca sides ever in the Champions League semi-final, before going on to lift the trophy in Madrid. 14 years later, Il Dimone di Piacenza has repeated history. Against a Barcelona side that looked unstoppable, Inter once again stood firm and defeated them with a team of veterans and free transfers.
He does the basic things. He makes players better.
But this isn't just about one match. This is about a quiet rebuild, a return to greatness. Under Inzaghi, Internazionale have reached 2 Champions League finals in 3 seasons. And they've done it while working with a fraction of the budget of bigger clubs, using players that are pushing 40, that were once labeled as rejects. From the top of the world in 2010 to a fallen giant for over a decade, the Nerazzurri are once again among Europe's elite. And this is their story.
Fratesi! And Inter are back in the driving seat.
In May of 2010, Internazionale were the kings of Europe. Under Mourinho, they had just done the unthinkable, won the treble, Serie A, Coppa Italia, and the Champions League. No Italian club had ever done it before. The San Siro felt invincible. Inter were on top of the world. But success came at a cost. Just days after lifting the trophy, Mourinho left for Real Madrid.
If I get into the dressing room, if I get into the bus, if I go back with them to Milan, if I walk into the San Siro full, if I walk into the Duomo full of people, I think I wouldn't go to Real Madrid.
And without him, the magic started to fade. Rafael Benitez came in first, but things didn't click. Then Leonardo took over. At first, it looked like the team had found new life. He hit the ground running, winning match after match, and quickly made fans believe again. In his first 12 games, Inter collected 30 points. That was an average of 2.5 points per game, better than Benitez and even better than Mourinho had managed before him. And then came one of the most thrilling nights of the season. In the Champions League round of 16, Inter had lost the first leg 1-0 at home to Bayern Munich. Everyone thought they were done. But in the return leg at the Allianz Arena, Inter pulled off something special. They beat Bayern in their own stadium, turning the tie around and booking their place in the quarterfinals. Unfortunately, that magic didn't last. In the quarterfinals, they were completely outplayed by Schalke. At home, in front of their fans, they lost 5-2. The scoreline shocked everyone. This was a team that had once beaten Barcelona, but was now falling apart. Things only got worse after that. They lost the derby to Milan 3-0, which ruined any momentum they had in the league. 2 weeks later, they suffered another blow, losing to Parma. And just like that, their hopes of winning the Scudetto were over. The team that looked unstoppable under Leonardo had run out of steam. The only silver lining was the Coppa Italia. Inter went all the way and lifted the trophy, giving fans at least something to cheer about. But it wasn't enough to hide the cracks. You can put nice clothes on a fat woman, she's still fat. On June 18, 2011, Leonardo stepped down as the manager to become the sporting director of PSG. What followed was more chaos. Gianpiero Gasperini came in, but that didn't last long. Claudio Ranieri followed, hoping to bring experience, but the results stayed poor. Then came Andrea Stramaccioni, a young coach promoted from the academy. He tried his best, but he was thrown into a mess. The 2011-2012 season was forgettable. Inter finished 6th in Serie A. They were knocked out in the Champions League round of 16, only reached the quarterfinals of the Coppa Italia, and then lost the Supercoppa Italiana. A team that had won everything just 2 years earlier was now struggling to stay relevant. Inter were drifting, and no one seemed to have the answers. By 2013, Inter Milan felt like a club stuck in the past, and the club was heading deeper into uncertainty as Massimo Moratti, the longtime owner who had led Inter through their golden years, stepped down. In October of 2013, he sold 70% of the club's shares to a group of Indonesian businessmen led by Erick Thohir. The price? Over $500 million. For the first time in its history, Inter Milan was no longer owned by an Italian. Thohir had big plans. He wanted to turn Inter into a modern self-sustaining club, one that could stand on its own financially without needing constant cash from the owners. But it wasn't easy. The team still spent more than it earned, and in 2015 broke UEFA's financial fair play rule. As a result, Inter was fined, and its squad had to be reduced for UEFA competitions. Around this time, Roberto Mancini came back as manager in November of 2014, hoping to rebuild something solid, but progress was slow. Then in June of 2016 came another big shift. A powerful Chinese company, Suning Holdings Group, bought the majority of Inter. They took control from both Tohir's group and what was left of the Moratti family shares. They spent around 270 million euros in total. With new money and new ambition, fans hoped this would finally be the turning point. But the start of the Suning era was rocky. After a poor run of preseason results, Inter parted ways with Mancini in August of 2016. The Italian had disagreed with the club's direction. In came Frank de Boer, but he only lasted 85 days. With just 4 wins in 11 games, he was shown the door. Next came Stefano Pioli. Things looked better. He led the team on an 8-game winning streak, but even that didn't last. Inter crashed out of the Europa League group stage, finishing last in what became the worst European campaign in the club's history. I mean, look at this group. Finishing last in this, it should be criminal. By the end of the season, Pioli was gone too. Inter had once again missed out on the top 3 in Serie A for the 6th year in a row. Finally, in June of 2017, they hired Luciano Spalletti, a steady hand known for his discipline and structure. And in his first season, something finally changed. On the final day of the 2017-2018 Serie A season, Inter beat Lazio 3-2, and that win earned them a spot in the Champions League, their return after 6 very long years. It felt like the dark days might finally be over. In August, Inter gave Spalletti a contract extension. At the same time, more changes were happening at the top. In October of 2018, Steven Zhang, the young son of Suning's owner, became club president, making him the youngest president in Inter's history. But despite all of this progress, things were still shaky on the pitch. After the 2018-2019 season, where Inter finished 4th, Spalletti was sacked. Despite all the chaos that was happening both on and off the pitch, the club actually made a crucial decision in 2018, one that would completely transform the club in the coming years. In 2018, the club brought in Giuseppe Marotta, the mastermind behind Juventus' long period of dominance. Marotta knew what it took to build a winning team. It wasn't with flashy signings, but with smart planning, structure, and financial discipline. Someone should teach financial discipline to Juventus now. Marotta brought that mindset with him to Inter, and immediately he started to make changes. In 2019, he hired Antonio Conte as the head coach. Conte was a demanding, fiery leader, exactly the kind Inter needed. He was known for squeezing every drop of effort out of his teams, and Marotta gave him the tools to work with. Inter signed Romelu Lukaku, a powerful striker who was hungry to prove himself. No, that's not a fat joke. Lukaku does love to score goals. I guess he also loved eating something else before the Champions League final, but we will get to that later in the video. They also added Nicolo Barella, a young Italian midfielder full of energy and drive, and slowly, the team began to transform. In Conte's first season, Inter finished 2nd in Serie A. They weren't champions yet, but at least they were back in the title race. But more importantly, they had returned to the Champions League. That same season, Inter also reached the final of the Europa League, but ended up losing to Sevilla. The loss hurt, but Inter fans were happy that they were still going to hear the Champions League anthem the next year. In Conte's second season, Inter pushed even harder. The team was becoming more confident, more consistent. He had turned them into a machine, organized, hungry, and very difficult to break down. Then new signings like Christian Eriksen and Hakimi added more quality, and everything came together in the 2021 season. That year, Inter won the Scudetto, their first one since 2010, ending Juventus' 9-year reign. For the fans, it meant everything. In the Champions League though, Inter continued to struggle. They were eliminated in the group stage, finishing dead last. They had 1 win. It was the 3rd time in a row that Internazionale had failed to make it out of the groups. Throughout this time, Marotta tried to convince Conte that they needed to keep things realistic. They didn't have the budget of PSG, Bayern, or even Barcelona. Yes, during this time, Barcelona had actual money. And this frustration between Conte and Marotta began to bubble under the surface. Only days after winning the Scudetto, Antonio Conte left the club. He and the board parted ways by mutual agreement. Behind the scenes, there were disagreements, especially about the future. Conte wanted to build on the title, but the club needed to cut costs. In the end, it was a breakup that felt both expected, but still heartbreaking. Soon after, Inter made their next big decision. They appointed Simone Inzaghi as the new head coach. Now, Inzaghi had quietly done an excellent job at Lazio, and now he was stepping into one of the biggest jobs in Europe. Now, he wasn't as fiery as Conte or as loud and as charismatic as Mourinho, but he had the calm confidence, and more importantly, he had a clear vision of how he wanted his side to play. He was handed a tough task though. He had to rebuild the spirit of the championship squad with fewer resources, less star power, but the same sky-high expectations. Before the new season even started, Romelu Lukaku, Inter's top scorer and a hero of the title-winning campaign, was sold to Chelsea. It was the most expensive transfer ever for an Italian club, and many feared it would rip the heart out of the team. Now, for most teams, this would have been a disaster, losing a number 9 who's giving you goals regularly. But Inzaghi has this ability to get the most out of the resources available to him. In his first season, he won both the Coppa Italia and the Supercoppa Italiana, proving that the team was ready for silverware. In the Serie A, they stayed near the top, They finished second while having the best attack in the entire league with 84 goals. In the Champions League though, they still weren't at their best. They finished second in their group behind Real Madrid, but were immediately eliminated in the next round against Liverpool. It was a close tie. Inter only lost by 1 goal, but they still fell behind Europe's elite, even though they were having success domestically. Then everything changed in the 2023 season. Inter became one of the toughest teams to break down, the opposite of your local hooker. Their defense was rock solid, their midfield super organized, they were tighter than a nun. In fact, during the 2023 season, they went on a 13-game unbeaten run in the Champions League. So the best teams that Europe had to offer could not break down Inzaghi's Inter. I mean, think about it, they were so good defensively that Onana looked good. I'm just kidding, Onana was actually pretty good for Inter. It seems like everyone just gets worse at United. That season, the Nerazzurri found themselves in another so-called group of death, with Bayern and Barcelona. Most expected them to finish third, but instead Inzaghi's side made it out of the group in second place. And from there they kept winning. A narrow 1-0 win against Porto in the round of 16, followed by a 5-3 win over Benfica in the quarterfinals. Then came the semis. The only thing standing between Inter and a return to the Champions League final was their city rivals Milan.
Mkhitaryan con Tonali che guadagna il fondo, pericolo, il tiro, Onana, pericolo, attenzione, attenzione Leao, il tiro, e Leao ha fatto quello che sa fare meglio, palla sul primo palo, il colpo di testa, il miracolo di Maignan, il miracolo di Maignan, Lukaku, Lautaro, è solo, è gol, è gol, è gol, è gol, è gol, è gol, il toro, 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 Inter in vantaggio, il gol di Lautaro, il gol di Lautaro, il gol di Lautaro, con il destro, Ciala, palla a giro, attenzione, il gol, è gol, è gol, è gol, è gol, il Cigno, il Cigno, il Cigno, il Cigno, Inter in vantaggio, il gol di Edin Dzeko, il gol di Dzeko al minuto 8, Inter in vantaggio con il gol di Dzeko.
Inter won the tie convincingly, and they were through. The Champions League final, their return since 2010. In the final, they went toe-to-toe with Manchester City, oil money, the ball genius, the most dominant team in Europe. It was a tight tactical battle. Inter gave everything, but a single goal from Rodri was the difference. Despite the loss, Inter had the respect of the footballing world, because what they had done was remarkable. They reached the final not with flashy names, but with discipline, organization, and belief. They beat richer clubs, they outplayed bigger squads, and they did it on the same budget that I have when I go to the convenience store. Well, they did it all again in 2025.
Carlos Augusto, and it's gone in from Davide Fratesi! Fratesi! Dumfries! Would you believe it? Acerbi!
Inter continued winning with players that everyone else had written off. Their average age was one of the highest in the Champions League knockout rounds. Sure, they had players like Bastoni and Barella, but Acerbi was 37, Mkhitaryan 36, Sommer and Damian mid-30s. To most clubs, it looks like a gathering of the unks. To Inter, that was the heartbeat of their squad. It was Acerbi who kept Inter's Champions League dreams alive against Barca. It was Mkhitaryan and Çalhanoğlu who were running non-stop. Seriously, I want these guys tested, because how are they not getting tired? Inzaghi took all these players that were once seen as rejects and used them to make Inter unstoppable. Written off, free transfers, nobodies. It didn't matter. Inzaghi would find a role for that player. They had lost Onana, Brozovic, Skriniar, Dzeko, but Inzaghi and Marotta adapted. They brought in Sommer, Thuram on a free, Fratesi. They weren't big headlines, it wasn't a huge spending spree, it was just smart, disciplined recruitment. They weren't building a team to sell shirts, they were building a team to win matches. From treble winners to lost years, and now back among the best, Inter Milan's journey has been anything but easy, but they are back. And one guy who has been through all of it is Lautaro Martinez. To see just how good the bull has been for Internacional, you gotta check out this video right here.